My name is Linda Thompson. I am 45 years old. I work as a school bus driver. My son's name is Jacob. He is 28 and kind. He is getting married. Tonight is his engagement dinner at a small fancy restaurant downtown. Jacob chose a red tie, and he kept smiling like a man who had already imagined a whole life with the woman he loves. Her name is Melissa. She has long dark hair and a laugh that makes Jacob forget to be serious. We sat at a round table under soft lights. Family from both sides filled the room. My husband, Tom, sat beside me with his hand on my knee. Jacob's future in-laws sat across the table in matching smiles. Melissa's mother, Diane Carter, wore a shiny necklace and a judge-like smile. She had been polite to me before. She had greeted me, shaken my hand, and said the usual things. Her voice was smooth like polished glass. Then, 10 minutes into the dinner, something cold slipped into the air. Melissa's mother leaned forward as if to tell a secret. She whispered, but loud enough for the people closest to us to hear. "We don't want her kind joining our family," she said. Her words landed on my chest like a sudden stone. Her kind. I felt every person at the table turn, like the world had a new center, and it was me. I swallowed my pride. I did not want to make a scene. I smiled, maybe too small. I looked at Tom, who looked stunned and angry. Jacob's fork stopped mid-bite. Melissa's face went a color I had not seen before. For a long second, nothing moved. Then the waiter came by with a small envelope in his hand. He walked slowly like he was holding something heavy. He set it down at my place. I did not understand why. My fingers brushed the paper. It felt ordinary. The envelope was plain white. I slipped my thumb under the flap and pulled out the paper inside. There were printed pages, photos of messages, a phone screenshot, and a small note folded around them. I opened the note. The words were simple and sharp: truth. You deserve to know. My heart thudded. I looked up at the table. Diane's smile had gone thin. She looked at me like she had just done something clever and I had not noticed. People were whispering. My son's face was a mixture of hurt and confusion. I had to know what those papers said. I had to read them. I took a breath and started to read. The first page was a screenshot of a private message. The words were typed and cruel. They used the same phrase Diane had whispered, but even worse. The message read, "We don't want her kind here. She is loud. She is from the wrong side of town. She will ruin our family image." The name on the message was Diane Carter. The timestamp was 2 days ago. My hands trembled. I read the next screenshot. It was another private message from Diane to a friend. It said she would quietly deal with Jacob's bad taste. There were more messages. One read, "Don't worry. I'll make sure she is not at the wedding." Another showed Diane laughing with a friend and sending a photo that included me, taken at a school event, with the caption, "Not for our table." The room grew very small. The tablecloth, the candles, the soft music, all of it felt like someone else's party. I felt stupid that I had tried so hard to be kind to Diane. I felt small for hoping she might accept me. I had worked overtime to help Jacob with rent, had driven him to interviews, had taught him to change a tire. I had thought that being kind mattered. That night we had small conversations before the dinner. Jacob hugged me and whispered, "I hope they like you, Mom." I wanted to tell him that I did not care if they liked me or not, that he chose Melissa and I loved her. I held my tongue because this was his night. I smiled and tried to be warm. But Diane's whisper had cut the undercurrent of the whole dinner. After the whisper, the waiter moved away. The room looked at me like a photograph that had suddenly been turned. Someone cleared their throat. A man across the table tried to smile, but it looked like he was twisting his face into safety. Melissa blinked a few times and said, "Mom, why would you say that?" Her voice was soft, like a child asking why grown-ups were cruel. Diane put on a different voice, one that said the whisper had been nothing, a joke. "I was only saying we want to keep things simple, dear," she said in a bright voice that did not reach her eyes. "You know how I worry about the family image." Her laugh was short and brittle. Jacob's face turned red. He looked at his mother, then back at me, like a man torn in half. "Mom, I love her," he said between his teeth. "I love Melissa." "Of course you do, sweetheart," Diane said, and her lips smiled. I folded the paper again and kept it in my palm. I did not want to show it to Jacob. I did not want to spoil his night. But I also could not swallow how I felt. Time slowed down. The plates clinked. Conversations tried to move on like a train that refused to stop. 10 minutes passed. We ate in silence that tasted like metal. The chef's special, the wine, the little candles, they all meant less now. A woman at the next table looked over and tried to smile at me like she wanted to offer help but did not know how. I thought about walking out. I thought about standing up and shouting at Diane that her words were small and ugly, and that my son deserved better than secret whispers. But Jacob's eyes were sad, and Melissa looked lost. I knew that a scene would break them both in ways they did not need tonight. Then the waiter came again. He placed another envelope at Jacob's plate and said quietly, "This arrived for the groom." Jacob picked it up slowly. He frowned at the handwriting and slid his finger under the flap. He brought out a single photograph. It was not printed like a normal photo. It was the kind that old cameras made grainy hard. The image showed a small group of people at a country picnic years ago. In the back of the picture, a man stood with his arm around a young woman. The woman's face looked exactly like Melissa. Her hair was the same, her nose the same. Jacob's breath caught. The photo had a note on the back. The handwriting was familiar to me now. It was the same as the first note. "You should see this." The photograph should have been something sweet, maybe an old family moment that was innocent. But the way it sat on the table felt like a trap. Jacob looked at Melissa, who was paler than the tablecloth. "Where did you get that?" he asked, voice tight. No one answered right away. Then the restaurant quieted. People turned. Chopsticks paused in midair. My husband Tom got to his feet without thinking. He said, "Who sent those?" His voice was deeper than he meant it to be. Diane sat very still, like a cat caught in a room of sudden noises. Her hands folded in her lap. For the first time that night, I saw fear on her face. Fear looked strange on her, sharp and honest and small. At that moment, I felt something break inside me. A long, slow part of my throat unhooked and words wanted to spill out. I could have stood and read aloud the messages in my hand. I could have held up the screenshots and shown the room the real Diane. I could have shouted at her for whispering hate. But I remembered Jacob's smile. I remembered how he had looked at Melissa like he had found home. I did not want to be the person who ruined the one bright thing in his life. I folded my hands and kept quiet. Then, as if someone had lit a match under the room, the waiter, who had been nervous all evening, stepped forward with another paper. He handed me an envelope with my name on it. It was heavier than the others. Inside was a single page. My eyes scanned the top and my mouth dried. The words were printed in bold letters across the paper. Public commentary thread, Diane Carter, it said. Below was a long list of comments from a local community forum. The top comment had Diane's full name and a tone that was cold and mocking. "People like Linda should not mix with families like ours," it read, and there were dates and times and screenshots of Diane online, posting the same phrase, laughing. My heart pounded. The room felt very loud. I opened my mouth to speak. I had waited, swallowed my pride, kept quiet to protect my son's night. But the words on the paper were not just whispers. They were proof. They were loud and clear. I looked up, and every head at the table turned toward Diane. I stood. I did not plan to. My legs moved and my voice came out like the sound of a bell. "I know what she said," I said, and the words were steady though my hands shook. "And I know what she wrote." People gasped. Jacob stood too, the chair scraping like thunder. Melissa covered her mouth. Diane's face went white. Her picture-perfect necklace seemed to weigh her down. "It's true," I continued. "She said it. She doesn't want me in this family." The room held its breath. My next words would change the night. I looked at my son. I looked at the woman he loved. I felt the ache of a mother who wanted her child to have everything good and also to be brave enough to face truth. Then I read aloud the first line of the forum comment. "People like Linda should not mix with families like ours." The restaurant seemed to tilt. Someone knocked over a glass. Someone cried out. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a trapped bird. And in that loud, stunned silence, The celebration that had been warm and bright just minutes ago shattered into pieces. People were standing, shouting, asking questions. Jacob's eyes were wide and wet. I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace. But 10 minutes later, with a plain envelope in my hands and words that could not be hidden, the truth came out. The celebration was destroyed. The restaurant was too quiet after the storm of voices. It felt like the walls were holding their breath. Waiters stood frozen. Guests stared at Diane like she had grown a second head. The soft jazz music in the background suddenly felt wrong, like someone playing cheerful notes at a funeral. Melissa's chair scraped as she stood up slowly. Her face was blotchy from crying, and for a moment, she looked like she was 13 again instead of 26. "Mom," she whispered, "why would you say things like that? Why would you post that?" Diane opened her mouth, but only a small, broken squeak came out. She looked like she wanted to lie, but the envelopes, the proof, were sitting on the table like bright, loud fire alarms. Jacob was breathing hard. His hands were on his hips, his chest rising and falling like someone who had run a mile and only now realized how tired he was. "Is that really how you see my mother?" he asked Diane. His voice cracked on the word, "mother." Diane tried to smile. It was the type of smile people use when they want to pretend nothing happened. "Honey, I was just trying to protect you. Families like ours." "Families like what?" Jacob snapped. The room went still again. I felt all the eyes sliding to me. The bus driver. The woman from the wrong side of town. The mother who had worked night shifts and long weekends just to keep food in the fridge. For a second my cheeks burned, not with shame, but with anger. The kind of deep anger that grows roots inside you because you held it back too long. But before anyone could say another word, Melissa suddenly picked up the second envelope, the one that had been placed in front of Jacob. She looked at the photo again, at the young woman who looked exactly like her. Then she flipped it over. She stared at the signature. Then her eyes widened. "This wasn't sent to hurt us," she whispered. "It was sent to warn us." Everyone stared. But Melissa didn't explain. Instead, she looked up sharply at the waiter, who had been silently backing away. "Sir," she said, voice trembling but firm, "who told you to give us these envelopes?" He froze, hands shaking. Then he whispered, "Someone asked me to. They booked the private room and said these needed to be delivered at specific times." Diane stood up so fast her chair almost fell. "What someone?" "Who?" she demanded. The waiter swallowed. He didn't leave a name. He just said that everything would make sense by the end of the night. The end of the night. That sentence made the hair on my arm stand up. It felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place, but the picture was still hidden. "Did this person describe himself?" Tom asked gently. The waiter nodded. "Yes." He was tall. Gray jacket. "He said he knew your family." Jacob stepped closer. "My family? Or Melissa's family?" The waiter's eyes dropped. "Melissa's." That landed like a stone. Melissa gasped and sat down slowly. Her fingers trembled as she held the picture again. That's impossible," she whispered. "There is no one else left. Everyone from that side is gone." Diane's lips twitched. "Honey, don't start with that again." "Start with what?" Melissa yelled, surprising everyone. "Start with the truth? Start with what you've been hiding for years." Silence crashed over us. Then a soft, almost weak voice escaped Melissa's throat. "Mom, who is the man in this picture with me?" Diane did not answer. Her face cracked like a wall splitting under weight. Jacob stepped closer. "Diane, what did you hide from her?" I watched Melissa's hands curl into fists. Her whole body shook. Tears filled her eyes again, but didn't fall yet. They were held back by rage, by confusion, by a kind of pain children only feel when they realize a parent has lied to them. "You told me I never knew my father," Melissa whispered. "You told me he left before I could talk. You told me he had no family, no friends, nothing." Diane whispered. "But this picture," Melissa continued, holding it up, "this picture proves you lied." People at nearby tables were no longer pretending to eat. They were staring openly now. Some had hands over their mouths. A man at a corner table muttered, "Oh God." Diane sank into her chair. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. She seemed smaller now, not the sharp, proud woman from earlier. More like a mother who had finally run out of places to hide her secrets. Jacob looked at Melissa. What are you talking about? Melissa finally let the tears fall. My mother told me my father abandoned me when I was 2. She said he didn't want me. She said she didn't have any photos left of him because she burned them. Everyone stared at Diane. Slowly, she lowered her hands, and for the first time, she looked guilty. Truly guilty. Melissa, she whispered, I didn't want you to know. Melissa stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Know what? My chest tightened. The whole room was watching a family break. Diane's chin trembled. Then she whispered something that made the entire table go silent. He didn't abandon you. He was forced to leave. The room seemed to tilt. Melissa's lip quivered. What do you mean? Diane looked like she was swallowing rocks. Your father, he got into trouble. Big trouble. I didn't want that around you. I didn't want our life ruined. I thought if I erased him, if I erased that part of your story, you would be safe. Melissa covered her mouth. Jacob stared at Diane like she was a stranger. I sat completely still, clutching the envelope in my lap. The waiter stepped forward again, timidly. There's one more thing, he whispered. The man who left the envelopes, he left a final one. He said it was for the bride's mother. Diane's eyes widened. He handed her a thick, heavy envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Her face drained of color. She made a strangled noise in her throat. Diane dropped the paper. I saw only one sentence before it hit the floor. I warned you I would come back for her. The entire room gasped. Melissa stumbled backward. Jacob grabbed her to steady her. Someone screamed at another table. Tom whispered, What does that mean? But before anyone could think, before Diane could even pick up the paper, the lights in the restaurant flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. A woman screamed. Glasses shattered in the dark. People scrambled. Chairs crashed. Someone yelled for help. In the black silence, I heard Melissa whisper one terrifying word. Dad. The darkness swallowed everything. Chairs scraped. Plates crashed to the floor. People whispered, panicked, some cried out. The restaurant that had been full of warm lights seconds ago now felt like the inside of a cave. I grabbed the edge of the table, afraid to move. My heart thumped in my throat. Jacob? I whispered. I'm here, Mom, he answered somewhere to my right. I heard Melissa breathing fast, panicked, shallow breaths. Then her voice, small and shaking, Mom, is someone playing a joke? Tell me this is a joke. But Diane didn't answer. Then, a faint glow appeared at the far end of the dining room. A single emergency light flickered to life, casting a cold, weak yellow light across the floor. People gasped. Because standing in the far corner, no one had seen him enter, was a tall man in a gray jacket. The exact description the waiter gave earlier. He wasn't moving. He wasn't speaking. He just stood there in the half-shadow, staring straight at Diane. Melissa's breath hitched. Jacob grabbed her hand. Tom stepped in front of me. The man in the gray jacket took one step forward. Diane stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. This can't be, she whispered. Her voice cracked with fear. He stepped forward again. Slow, calm, terrifying. The whole room held its breath. The emergency light flickered again, this time brighter, revealing his face more clearly. He was older than the photo, maybe mid-40s. His hair a little shorter. His eyes darker. But Melissa's resemblance to him was unmistakable. Melissa gasped like someone had punched her lungs empty. That's him, she whispered. That's my father. People whispered, stunned. Diane grabbed onto the back of a chair as if she might fall. You are supposed to be gone, she said in a trembling voice. You were supposed to disappear. The man tilted his head slightly. You made sure of that, he said, his voice low and steady. Even from across the room, I felt the cold in his tone. But why now? Diane asked, tears filling her eyes. Why come now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out another envelope, much thicker than any of the others. He held it between 2 fingers. For her, he said, nodding at Melissa. The silence broke with people whispering. Melissa froze, unable to move. Jacob whispered to her, "Do you want us to get it?" She shook her head. "No. I'll go." Her legs trembled, but she walked forward anyway. When she reached him, he didn't touch her. He simply held the envelope out, and she took it with both hands like it was a newborn bird. What is this?" she whispered. "Your truth," he answered. Diane let out a sob. "No, please don't do this." But the man ignored her. Melissa opened the envelope with shaking hands. She pulled out a stack of papers and a small flash drive. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened in shock. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mom, what did you do?" Diane collapsed into a chair. "I was trying to protect you," she cried. "You have to understand." But the man stepped closer and said, "Tell her the truth, Diane. All of it. Or I will." The tension snapped like a rubber band. Diane sobbed harder. "I didn't want him raising you," she screamed. He got involved with dangerous people. He owed money. He was bad for you." Melissa shook her head. "So you lied about everything? You hid him? You said he left me." "I had to," Diane cried. "I wanted a better life for us. A safer one." The man let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Safer? You ruined her childhood. You stole her father." His eyes darkened. "And then you spent years pretending she came from a perfect family." Diane shook her head violently. "I was trying to protect her from you." But the man stared at her with tired eyes. "If you wanted to protect her, you would have let her choose." The room was so silent I could hear someone crying at a table behind us. Melissa hugged the papers to her chest. "Why did you wait until now?" she whispered. Her father looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes softened for the first time. "Because," he said quietly, "your fiancé deserves to know the truth before he marries into this family. And so do you." Melissa's face twisted in confusion and heartbreak. "But what does this have to do with Jacob? Why send him things? Why tonight?" The man stepped back and pointed at the flash drive. "Because what's on that," he said, "will change everything about who you thought your mother was." Diane buried her face in her hands. "Please, don't show them." But it was too late. Jacob pulled Melissa close. "Let's go outside," he said. "We'll figure this out. Together." Melissa nodded weakly. But before they could move, the man in the gray jacket took a breath and said something that made every person in the room freeze. "I didn't just come back to warn you," he said softly. "I came back because Diane wasn't the only one lying." Everyone turned to stare at him. He looked straight at Diane, then at Melissa, then at Jacob. "I came back," he said, "because someone in this room helped her hide me. Someone very close to your family." Heads snapped in every direction. Melissa gasped. Jacob tightened his grip on her hand. I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. Diane's eyes widened in terror. "Please," she whispered, "don't say it. Don't tell her." But the man ignored her and stepped forward, pointing to the back of the room. To someone none of us expected. Someone who stood up in shock, face drained of all color. And when I saw who he pointed at, my stomach dropped to the floor. He was pointing directly at my husband, Tom. Time stopped. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe the room was still loud with whispering and gasping and chairs scraping backward, but all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears as I stared at my husband, Tom. My husband. The man who'd held my hand at every school meeting. The man who woke up early to warm my car in the winter. The man who coached Jacob's t-ball team. The man who was now standing with both hands raised in shock, his face pale, his eyes wide with guilt he hadn't had time to hide. Diane covered her mouth. Melissa froze. Jacob stumbled backward like someone had shoved him. I couldn't move. The man in the gray jacket stepped forward, his gaze locked on Tom. "You remember me," he said. "Don't you?" Tom swallowed. His voice came out cracked. I don't know what you're talking about." But the man's eyes hardened. "Don't lie. Not now." Melissa looked like her knees might buckle. Jacob held her upright. "Dad," she whispered to the man, "what does he mean? What does Tom have to do with anything?" The man exhaled slow, long, like he'd been waiting years to speak. 12 years ago, he began, I was in trouble. Bad trouble. Some men were after me. I went to Diane for help, to see my daughter, just once. Melissa covered her mouth, tears forming again. Diane sobbed into her hands. I told you to leave. I told you never to come back. The man ignored her. He pointed straight at Tom again. And he made sure I didn't. I flinched like he'd slapped me. Tom shook his head. That's not true. That never happened. But the man's voice only grew steadier. You met me in the alley behind Diane's old building. You threatened me. You told me you'd call the police and have me arrested if I came near Melissa again. You told me you'd take care of the problem permanently if I didn't disappear. Gasps filled the room. I stared at Tom, waiting for him to say something, anything that made sense. But he just stood there, frozen, silent. Jacob looked at his father like he had never seen him before. Dad, is he telling the truth? Tom's lips parted. His voice was barely a whisper. I was trying to help you, Jacob. You were so young. You didn't need chaos. It felt like a punch to the heart. So you did do it, I whispered, my voice trembling. Tom finally looked at me, his eyes swimming with guilt. Linda. I thought I was protecting our family. I went to talk to him because I heard rumors, because Diane begged me to, because everyone said he was dangerous. Diane flinched, guilt washing over her face. The man's expression darkened. You didn't talk. You threatened me. You made sure I left town and never saw my daughter. You helped her mother erase me. The room fell into painful silence. Melissa suddenly shoved Jacob's hand away and stepped forward, her voice breaking. Mom, is this true? Did you and Tom really keep my father away from me? Did you lie to me for years with his help? Diane was crying too hard to answer. Tom rubbed his face like he wished he could erase himself. I didn't know everything she was hiding, he said desperately. I thought it was best. Melissa shook her head, devastated. You thought ruining my entire childhood was best? Then her voice cracked into a scream. You thought lying about my father was best? The sound tore through the restaurant. People flinched. Diane sobbed louder. Tom pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. Jacob looked from his father to Melissa, then to me, his expression shattered. I stepped toward Tom, my legs trembling. You made me feel ashamed of myself tonight, I said softly. You let Diane whisper about my kind. You didn't stand up for me. But you somehow found the courage to stand up for her lies? To threaten someone behind his daughter's back. Tom's eyes filled with tears. Linda, please. But I stepped back from him. Slowly. Carefully. Like he was someone I did not know. The man in the gray jacket took a deep breath and looked at Melissa again. I didn't come to ruin your night, he said quietly. I came to finally give you the truth. A truth that was stolen from you. He nodded toward the flash drive in Melissa's hands. That has everything, he said. Emails, voice recordings, documents, proof of what your mother and Tom did. Proof that I tried to see you. Proof that they kept me away. Melissa clutched the drive like it was burning her fingers. Then she turned to her mother. Why, she whispered. Why did you make me hate him? Why did you make me believe he didn't want me? Diane looked up, mascara running, voice barely audible. Because he was in danger. He was involved in bad things. I was terrified he would drag you down with him. Then why didn't you tell me that? Melissa cried. Why did you lie about everything else? Why did you make me think I wasn't worth staying for? Diane broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. No one moved. Not a single person. Then, Melissa looked at Tom. Her voice turned to ice. And you, she said. You helped her hide the truth. You helped ruin my life. Why? Why would you get involved? Tom's jaw shook. He looked at her with eyes full of guilt. Because I thought you'd ruin Jacob's life like your father ruined yours. The room exploded with gasps. Jacob stepped back like he'd been stabbed. Dad, no. Tom looked at me, then at our son, tears falling now. I just wanted to protect you. Jacob whispered, horror in every syllable. Not like this. The man in the gray jacket stepped forward again, his voice low and controlled. Jacob, he said, I'm sorry tonight turned into this. But you deserve to know the truth before you marry into a family built on lies. Jacob swallowed hard, his face pale. Melissa let out a shaky breath. I need air, she whispered. Jacob nodded and moved to help her. But as they walked toward the exit, the waiter jogged up, breathless. Yes, sir, ma'am. Someone just called the restaurant. They said something urgent. Jacob frowned. Who? The waiter trembled. They said their name was. He gulped. The person who sent the envelopes. Everyone froze. The man in the gray jacket stiffened. The waiter continued, voice shaking. And they said, this isn't finished. They said there's one last thing you all need to see. Melissa's hands shook around the flash drive. Jacob grabbed her arm gently. Diane looked like she might faint. Tom stared at the floor. And the man in the gray jacket whispered, dread filling his voice. Whoever sent those envelopes, it wasn't me. The entire restaurant went silent. Every head turned. Because if he didn't send the envelopes, then who did? Who knew the secrets? Who wanted them exposed? And why now? Before anyone could speak, the waiter held up one last unopened envelope. A final one. A chilling one. Addressed to the Thompson and Carter families, opened together. My heart dropped. Because whatever was inside was going to change everything. The whole room held its breath. Nobody moved. The final envelope sat heavy in front of us like a heart about to be broken open. I picked it up with shaking hands. My name was not on it. Jacob's name wasn't either. It said, the Thompson and Carter families, opened together. The paper felt warm from the hands that had touched it. I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out the paper inside. There were 3 things. A small, folded letter. A stack of printed receipts. And a tiny voice recorder the size of a coin. My eyes landed on the receipts first. They were from a local delivery service. The name on the receipts was familiar. It was Tom's old email. The dates matched the nights the envelopes had shown up. I could not breathe. My hands felt heavy. I looked up at Tom. His face was as pale as paper. He could not look me in the eye. I unfolded the small letter. The handwriting on it was plain and steady. To both families, it read, you deserve the truth. I cannot keep carrying this lie. I left this proof with the delivery company. If you open this, I will ask for help. T. My mouth went dry. The letter was short, but the meaning was clear. Tom had written it. He had planned to tell us and had left receipts to show he had paid for the envelopes. He had owned up to something. But why send the envelopes at all? Why cause the pain this night? Then I saw the voice recorder. I pressed play with trembling fingers. At first there was only a rustle, then a man's voice, my husband's voice, older and rough from worry. Listen, Tom said on the recording, and I felt my heart tear. I thought I was protecting our family. Diane begged me. She said she was protecting Melissa from a dangerous man. I threatened him in the alley. I told him to leave. I paid him to go. I thought that would end it. I was wrong. I thought hiding the truth would keep Jacob safe. Instead, I made a cruel choice. I am sorry. I am sorry to Linda, to Jacob, to Melissa. I will accept whatever comes. The words on the recorder were simple. They were a man at last telling the truth. The room was so quiet I could hear someone crying in the corner. Jacob's face went red and wet. Melissa's hands shook so hard she could not hold the flash drive. Diane made a small, animal sound and dug her nails into her palms. Jacob pushed back from the table like someone pushed him. He stood up, chair scraping loudly. He looked at his father, not just at the man who had coached t-ball, but at the man who had secretly helped erase another man from his daughter's life. Why? Jacob asked. His voice was raw. Why would you do that to her? To me? Tom's mouth quivered. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said. I was scared. I was told things lies that made me afraid for our family. I was wrong. I should have told the truth. I should have gone to the police the right way. Detective Collins, the plainclothes woman who had been at the door earlier, stepped forward then. She had been watching everything with steady eyes. She lifted a small pad of paper and said, "We have enough here for a formal statement. Threatening someone, paying them to leave, and hiding evidence can be crimes. We will need to take statements from everyone." Tom's shoulders drooped like a man who had carried a heavy sack for too long. He did not fight. He did not make excuses. He had sent the envelopes, maybe to confess, maybe to force himself to tell the truth. The receipts proved he arranged the deliveries. The recording proved he knew and felt guilty. Jacob looked at his mother. Diane, and then at his father. He looked like a young man whose foundation had split. "How could you?" he started, and his voice broke. Melissa was white as milk. She clutched the flash drive to her chest like it was a talisman. She looked at her father, at the man in the gray jacket, and her eyes filled with a strange mixture of pain and relief. Her father stepped forward. He put his hand gently on hers. "I didn't send all the envelopes," he said softly. "I sent the first one with the photo. I wanted her to know. But I didn't think it would spiral like this. I didn't send the forum posts or the others. I wanted truth, not revenge." Detective Collins listened and nodded. She said, "We will need to sort through everything. We will check the drive and the receipts. For now, we will escort you all to the station so we can record what happened." People in the restaurant watched with pity, curiosity, and a little joy that the secret was finally out. The warm glow of the night had become a cold, bright truth. Chairs were stacked by staff. The owner offered bottles of water and apologized more than once for the surprise. Outside, the air felt like it had been washed. I stood beside Tom and looked at him. He looked so small. He had been the man I hugged when the bus was late, the man who fixed the leaky sink. Now he was the man who had played a part in stealing someone's father away. I felt anger, yes. I felt hurt. But under it was something else, sadness for a man who had been scared into making a wrong choice. I thought of Jacob, my son, and how his life had shifted tonight. I thought of Melissa, who had been lied to since she was a child. I thought of Diane, who had carried secrets until they burned her. We all went to the station. The detectives took statements with kind, firm voices. They were fair. They asked questions and took the recorder and the receipts as evidence. Tom answered them all. He asked for help. He cried, and his voice was small. At one point, Melissa asked to speak to her father alone. They stepped into a small interview room. She sat and looked at him with a new, wary seriousness. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked when the door was closed. He took a long time to answer. "I was trying to protect you from my mistakes," he said quietly. "And I was afraid your mother would be punished and that you would lose everything. I thought if you never knew, you could have a simple life." Melissa's face crumpled. "You took that choice away, Dad. You took my choice." Outside the small room, Jacob took my hand. He squeezed it like a boy, and I squeezed back. "Mom," he said, voice small, "I am so sorry." I didn't know." "You didn't know," I said. "None of us did." When the detectives finished, they explained that Tom would not go to jail that night. He was not the violent man he had been accused of being. But he would have to answer questions, and there would be consequences. Diane, too, would have to face what she had done. The law would look into the payments, the threats, and the choices that hid a man from his daughter. On the walk back to our car, Jacob pulled Melissa close. He looked at her as if he saw a new person standing in front of him, stronger, wounded, and brave. "I don't know what happens next," he said softly. "But I know I love you, Melissa. I want to be honest. I don't want lies in our life." She looked up at him, and for the first time that night she smiled, not the old laugh, but a small, real smile. "We will need time," she said. "I need to think. I need to learn. But I want honesty, Jacob." He nodded. After that night, the town talked for weeks. Some people were cruel. Some people were kind. But over time, I noticed little changes. People who had once whispered at the market began to greet me like a neighbor. Diane stepped back from the family life she had controlled and began seeing a counselor. Tom went with her to a few sessions. They both tried to fix the damage they had done, not by hiding, but by telling the truth and making amends. Melissa did not call off the engagement that evening, but she did ask for a pause. She and Jacob worked through things slowly. Jacob learned to stand up for his mother and to ask questions of his father. Melissa found strength in telling her story. Her father stayed in town a little longer. He and Diane began, in small, painful steps, to talk and to try to heal what had been broken. As for me, I realized that swallowing my pride that night had not been weakness. It had allowed the truth to come out in a way that did not ruin my son's life completely. I had chosen kindness first, and later I had chosen truth. People call that courage. In the end, the envelopes had destroyed a celebration, but they also opened a door. They brought lies out into the light. They made people face their choices. They taught a small town that hiding truth can feel safe for a time, but truth will find a way. We walked home slowly that night. Jacob held my hand. Melissa walked with her father for a while and then joined us. The moon was thin and shy. The town was quiet. I looked at the people I loved and felt all the complicated things at once: sorrow, relief, and a small, bright hope. We would all have to work to rebuild trust. It would take time. But in the bright, honest morning after a dark and loud night, that felt like a place to start.